Hi there guys, I hope you have had a good day. Now we got our first glimpse of Eddy Ruiz working with his new trainer Eddy Reynoso as he took him on the pads. Now obviously Eddy Ruiz is looking to come back against Chris Arreola. That was supposed to happen this year but now has been moved to next year, which is fine because it gives him a bit more time to work with Eddy Reynoso. Now with a new trainer I reckon they need maybe 1, 2, sometimes even 3 camps to really settle in with their new trainer because things that change a lot. And Eddy Reynoso will be looking to change things up with Eddy Ruiz. Mainly, there's the discipline issue with Eddy Ruiz, the food, and the weight. I mean, Ruiz is a big guy, he's always going to be heavy, so it's important that he does maintain that because he is a heavyweight after all. But ultimately, he does kind of take it a bit too far, and he definitely doesn't do things in half measures. When he's committed, but when he's not, he's not. Ultimately, that is the mold created by Eddy Ruiz Jr. and something that maybe Eddy Reynoso will be looking to channel and make sure that he stays on the right path ahead of his ring return. Obviously, he's going to be motivated for his comeback fight and he will be motivated to climb back up the ladder and potentially get another world title opportunity. But at the moment, it's important that he learns what he needs to learn under Eddy Reynoso. He's not going to learn to be a different boxer completely, but ultimately he's going to learn different things and things he needs to do maybe that will complement his style with Eddy Reynoso. Now, obviously Eddy Ruiz is an out-and-out inside fighter. He's a bigger guy, so that works for him anyway. He's never going to box someone off the back foot. He's never going to be a fleet-footed boxer. Nowhere near the level of Tyson Fury or Alexander Usyk. He just doesn't have the footwork and the speed with his feet in order to do that. He's got extremely fast hands, and that is his biggest weapon, but slow feet. And that's not just down to his weight, that's just down to the fact that he has slow feet. Some fighters do. And ultimately, what he will be looking to do under Eddy Reynoso is work on his footwork. Not necessarily being faster on his feet, but his positioning and ability to use his feet to get into range and land his punches. Because you can be fast like Ruiz, but if you cannot get close to your opponents, then that is completely redundant. And where Eddy Ruiz is a smaller guy anyway, 6'2", height-wise he's a small guy. I mean, weight-wise, he's not obviously because he's a stocky guy as well. But ultimately, he needs to be able to close the distance against his opponent. And unless he's able to do that, that speed, the power that he has, it's redundant completely. Now in this clip with Eddy Reynoso, Ruiz does look lighter. He doesn't look a lot lighter. I mean, he's always looked a little bit thinner. Then he goes and gets on the scales and he weighs in 19 to 20 stone. So the look of Ruiz is never anything to go by. But ultimately, he does look a little bit thinner. Maybe I'm proven wrong when he steps on the scales, I bet I will be, but ultimately at the moment, what Ruiz is working on is not necessarily his weight, but some fundamentals with his new trainer. He is working on using his speed to get close to his opponent and defend catch shots, bob and weave as he comes forward, because obviously, as I said, he needs to close that distance. He cannot allow his opponents to use their physical advantages because he is a shorter guy in the heavyweight division. Tyson Fury, AJ, even Dillian White have height advantages over him, so if they establish their jab and a hard right hand like AJ did in the rematch, then he is unable to implement his style on them, which he needs to do. His style is getting close to his opponent. He couldn't do that against Anthony Joshua in the rematch because AJ didn't allow him, so if he's unable to do that, then he's unable to get anywhere close to winning the fight or causing any effect to his opponent. Anthony Joshua controlled him in the rematch. Ruiz was the one who was implementing his style on Anthony Joshua in the first one, and that is what he needs to do. And he has always had fast hands, and he always will have lightning fast hands, and that is, as I've said, the greatest weapon of Eddy Ruiz, but he needs things in order to complement that as well. You cannot just have fast hands and not be able to land those kind of punches, because he does pick good combination punches as well. He's quite powerful in addition to that, especially when he weighs in around 19 or 20 stone. So he has the power, the speed, and the combinations, but the one thing that always has let him down is his footwork. I mean, even in the first fight with Anthony Joshua, until Joshua allowed him to close that distance, or in fact, Anthony Joshua himself closed that distance, Ruiz was always finding it difficult to close the distance and use his footwork to get into range because Anthony Joshua's feet were faster than his, so he was able to use angles and get off to the side before Ruiz was able to land those combination punches that are so devastating. So that is why footwork is so important to Eddy Ruiz at this stage, because ultimately he needs to take away those physical and size advantages of his opponent, and footwork will allow him to do that. Eddy Reynoso has done the same thing with Canelo. Canelo doesn't necessarily have fast feet, but he has good positioning and good movement, and ultimately you never see Canelo's feet cross. So he's worked on his footwork. Canelo is fast, Canelo is powerful, but ultimately against someone like Floyd Mayweather who has faster feet than him, he came unstuck. That's why Canelo previously, not so much anymore, but previously did struggle with pure boxers because they have good footwork, whereas Canelo was not that fast on his feet. But Eddy Reynoso has trained him and helped him overcome that, not necessarily by speeding his footwork up, because that is very difficult to do. You can only improve that so much. Your feet are fast or they are slow, and you can develop that skill, but ultimately that still remains the same. Same with hand speed and power. You either have it or you don't. You can improve it somewhat, but ultimately it is what it is. And you have to develop other aspects of your game in order to complement that. That is what Canelo has done with positioning, timing, and using his angles. That is how his footwork has improved, but not necessarily sped up. And that is what I think he will look to do with Andy Ruiz. Go back to basics, work on the fundamentals. That will be very important in training Andy Ruiz. Also, there is the discipline issue, which I think that will be tackled by Eddy Reynoso, and there are champions in camp with Andy Ruiz. So that will give him all the motivation he needs. If he does not after that, then ultimately he's not going to get where he wants to go. But if he can win a world title once, then he can do it again. And what Andy Ruiz Jr. does need to prove is that he can peak across multiple fights. He doesn't just do it in one fight, because he does have one brilliant win on his record. But ultimately, he needs to prove that he can do it in 1, 2, 3 fights. He needs to prove that he can get back to that level and maybe fight the likes of Tyson Fury, Dillian White, Povetkin. What a fight that would be. Incredible. Luis Ortiz, another good fight. So have one training camp with his new trainer. Come back against Chris Arreola. Good fight for a comeback. Then he can start stepping up his opposition and start getting back and fighting the big boys again. Andy Ruiz needs 1 or 2 camps with his new trainer to sort out styles and get ready for his comeback. Then he can start stepping up his opposition. I mean, he's got a good working relationship, I would imagine, with Eddy Reynoso, and they just need to keep it going and keep their momentum. I mean, Andy Ruiz undoubtedly does need faster feet to complement his hand speed and everything else, but ultimately he does have a lot of attributes, especially considering that speed and his combinations as well. And if he can get better footwork, then he is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the heavyweight division. I want to see him in a rematch with Parker. I want to see him in there with Luis Ortiz, maybe Deontay Wilder. I want to see Andy Ruiz in these big fights, and I want to see how he gets on. Hopefully, those fights will happen, and we can see how good Andy Ruiz really is. Guys, anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe if you are new. Thanks, guys.